Hello, I'm Matt Ward and I'm here having a chat with my friend Lia Tseki about Autentive, which is her new community interest company that aims to offer and promote services and interventions that improve the lives of autistic and neurodivergent people and their families or carers. And that is primarily or initially through a tool called the Beautiful Burnout. Hi Lia, how are you today?
I'm okay, thank you.
That seems very formal. I know, it's my fault.
Very autistic.
Yeah.
This is classic.
This isn't us, is it? So, let's get straight into it. What led you up to the idea then? How have you got from pre-diagnosis up to the launch of Autentive?
So I guess 2nd of April is World Autism Awareness Day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also when 3 years ago I got diagnosed with autism.
Is it 3 years now?
It's 3 years already.
Wow.
Time flies. And it felt like a good day to launch this, both Autentive Community Interest Company, which is the vehicle carrying the Beautiful Burnout, a burnout recovery tool, checklist, which was born out of a need, my need, to have something in place when, unfortunately, I found myself crashing into a burnout, autistic burnout. And I hadn't found any support at that time. I had sought support, but for a variety of reasons, I was unable to have something in place that would meet my needs, I guess. So what happened, I guess, I mentioned the diagnosis, 2nd of April 2022. I guess, where does it start? How did I find myself there? Woman in her mid-40s, having an autism assessment. So someone who had spent time with me, a friend, they were autistic, and they gently pointed out to me as a question, Lia, have you thought you might be autistic?
Right.
In one conversation, which then it was like out of the blue.
You didn't expect it?
Not at all. I mean, I didn't know much about autism, really. I had met a few people who were autistic, but could count them in one hand.
Yeah.
Yes, very few, I guess. And this is the case. It's at the moment, it's only between 1 or 2% of people in the population that are autistic. So you get 1 in 100 people you meet might be autistic and diagnosed at least. So there you go. How many is any person expected to meet in their lives? It's a bit rare. But then, because I had known this person and through connecting with them, I actually learned quite a bit more. And that triggered trying to go and get a diagnosis, which I had to ask for it twice.
Yeah, so what was that process like?
So I was lucky when I had it. I was lucky, why? I mean, there is quite a bit of stress, obviously, and a bit of, for someone especially who hasn't ever considered that they might be autistic or it hasn't crossed their minds. It's like a bit of an identity crisis anyway, so you're met with the unknown. I've said I was lucky in comparison to others because the first GP I went to, they said that I was kind of highly functional and they wouldn't send me for a diagnosis, which that's another story. The highly functional, there is quite a bit of a discourse around it, how, that it's not really about highly functional autistic people, but maybe you could say low support needs, but they still have support needs.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the second time when I moved to Margate, I guess in comparison to London where I was before, there is probably maybe less demand. And maybe by then as well, there was a year that had gone past. I was able to articulate maybe a few more of my symptoms a lot better, having learned a bit more about the condition. And I was referred to a specialist assessment center. And the lucky, again, where is the lucky bit? That it took a short time from referral to being contacted. And for the entire assessment, you go through some questionnaires, like sending back and forth some questionnaires. And then you have like a face-to-face interview and all that from the first letter to the report. It took like maybe 8 months in total, between 6 and 8 months.
Right. Okay.
So this is quite fast because I've had like discussions with other people to start with being referred for an assessment and waiting like years.
Yeah, it can take years, yeah. That's what I've heard as well.
Exactly, and there is a lot more pressure now because there is a lot more awareness.
And that's quite off-putting as well because it kind of makes you think, I mean, I'm thinking about getting an ADHD assessment, but I'm thinking, I've been hearing that it can take up to 5 years to get an assessment. And
so
then I think, well, what good's that going to do me?
I was hearing the same.
Yeah.
So it's good to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But if you feel you need this diagnosis, for whatever reason it's valuable to you, because some people may not need it. They can be self-diagnosed and they're fine with that.
Well, I feel like I'm self-diagnosed. I've done an online test which says I'm highly likely to have ADHD.
This is great because it's a good tip generally if you're thinking of a diagnosis. If people go and have some online tests, maybe 2 or 3, try different sites as well, just for...
No, I've done a couple.
And then this is the sort of evidence, in a way, that you go to your GP and ask for an assessment.
Yeah.
And obviously people can go, there are private assessments as well, private assessment centers. I'm not sure how much faster one would get, if it's in any way better, faster than the NHS experience. I do believe that it has a lot to do with where you are. Some locations, councils, boroughs, places in areas in England, like there can be less demand or a better offer. Or for some reason, things, maybe I was just lucky that my, referral was picked up so quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe they have rounds.
Yeah.
So the idea is do some online tests and go to your GP and be prepared for the worst case scenario. But you may end up being lucky. It is stressful. It can be stressful, unfortunately. And it depends a lot on the personality. Like you say, maybe some people don't even need to go and have a diagnosis. And that's, but for those who do feel that it might be valuable, don't be off-put by whatever you hear around. Just go and do it. And I guess, yes, this is why, having gone through all that, I remember that it was really stressful when I was going through that. And I remember that I felt like you don't really know who to ask. Especially if it's a new thing for you.
Yeah.
You don't know what's out there. You don't know.
Well, I remember talking to you and you felt like you didn't know yourself.
You do go through that, of course.
You felt like
I'm still going through that.
I know you felt like people would treat you differently. And I think maybe it was that you felt like maybe you had to treat yourself differently.
This is it. I was going to say, it wasn't really, I don't care about the people.
No, I remember you saying to me, what if people at work think differently of me? And
Do you remember saying that? Usually it does. I don't really remember
when we were
that.
sitting down at the mulberry tree. Yeah, because I think it was the day before you were getting the results back, wasn't it? Because you'd already done the test.
On that one, I was actually I remember I was thinking about the result, and I was like, I don't really know what it will be. And then you came. It's like, I'll be surprised if you're not autistic. Yes, you were sure.
I was just listening to you. One of the things you said was, I think that, people at work might respond to me differently. And I said to you, well, I don't think you have to tell them, that's not a requirement.
I don't even remember that part.
Yeah, I remember you were quite vulnerable about it.
I think, I still am.
And then you asked me, you said, what do you think the test will say? And I said to you, honestly, if it says that you're not autistic, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah.
And
some other people had told me that. It's interesting because it's like, it is interesting to me because I don't really know what they see. And that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm still kind of going through that identity.
But it's not a defining thing for... It didn't even come into my consciousness that you might have an autism diagnosis until we actually started talking about it that night, because you were just Lia.
Yeah.
And it was only when you said, okay, do you think I would have this diagnosis? And I thought about it and I thought, yeah, actually, that would really make sense that you would get an autism diagnosis. But I think I also said to you, I know I also said to you, because there's no way that I wouldn't have said this to you. I said I would be very surprised if it came back saying that you didn't have autism. But it will make no difference to the way that I interact with you at all. Because I already know you and who you are and how you are. And
I don't even remember having any of these worries. Right now, I remember it was stressful. So later, obviously, for those who get the diagnosis, you get it on the day, on the face-to-face interview day. That was with a doctor and another, two doctors, and just myself. And because sometimes people have said there might be like more specialists or observers. So we were just 3 people there in the room. The interview probably lasted around an hour, face-to-face interview, set questions. You get the response on the day, and then 2 months later or 3 months late, 2 months it was for me, I think, the full report comes back, which is, again, varied, depending on the assessment center. My report was like maybe 4 or 5 pages long, and it did give me some information on what to do next, like maybe some reading, some organizations that I could get in touch to in the local area, in Kent. On the day, though, when I've heard, which is, 2nd of April, I loved the synchronicity because it was, Autism Awareness Day, and I became aware of my autism on that day. And you know how I like these little synchronicities.
You do like coincidences, don't you? Yeah.
I was like, great. on itself, that's worth celebrating, that, the coincidence. But it was a relief, and I guess that's why I went and sought the diagnosis in the first place, that, when that was triggered by this autistic friend, because it is a hidden part of oneself. To me, it was entirely hidden. It had never crossed my mind. I wasn't really aware of autism as a condition, or I didn't know much. So it kind of, you get that, and you start bringing that part of yourself that was hidden, like from you, into light, and you get to know a part of yourself. So that part of yourself before the diagnosis, to me, you only got to know it because of maybe things you couldn't do well, or you couldn't understand, or they were making no sense.
So I've got a question.
And
So my question is, how do you treat yourself differently, knowing that you have this diagnosis? Because it seems to me like you are looking at the world differently.
But obviously it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's a journey. But
so how much of a journey? How much of a...
It's a daily journey. I mean, like, I'm still a baby steps beginner. Like, I'm not coming out here saying, I'm an expert now in autism or anything like that.
No, I'm not saying you are, but...
Or even actually, the best thing it gave me is you can go your entire life not knowing yourself, and how little I know myself, and this sort of...
So with this new knowledge, how have you adapted your life, or how have you adapted your behaviours towards things, either with friends or with work? Or do you feel like having the diagnosis has helped you, or do you feel like you would be happier if you had just done it without...
So all these questions that you're just asking, I've never asked myself. So they're like, and maybe
You
this
need some
answers
time
the
to think about
question.
those.
No, this answers your question. I have actually, I think, progressively, it has taken effort, and eventually I found a therapist and coach, both in one person, who has helped along a great deal. And that has been only in the last year, actually.
Right.
So we'll get back to that
Yeah.
support and, how everything comes together. But it was meaningful to me in that way, that like something started being explained as like, oh, there was a big part of you that you just didn't come to recognize and get to know. The problem was that I needed help in doing that.
Yeah.
And somehow, although I was lucky with the assessment, I was unlucky with getting any help. And part of it was when you know so little, like, what is the criteria of help? What things do you need help with?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of unknown as to, you don't even know, like, what help you should be getting. So the first question was like, I don't know what areas, what support, what is the offer out there, and what I need. This was like the first step, really, and the first work that one does is start recognizing support needs they didn't know they had.
And is this across the board, sort of from government level, in terms of...
To start with, psychologically, when we know, or how you live, basically.
So it's about the medical help you can get, and then the help you can get in the workplace, and then having friends and family finding out how they can help you.
Help is therapy and coaching.
Right.
That's therapy, coaching, counseling. Maybe there are support groups, depending on what people need. Then you start getting into like daily life. Yeah. It took me a while to understand that even in day-to-day living, I had support needs. Basically, when you live your entire life as to, I belong in that normal, what you call normal, that imaginary population.
I don't imagine normal to me is...
It doesn't really exist what is normal. But anyway, there is that is sort of a construct. At least in my view. You've lived as a very independent person and with an identity that is fully able, adult, able to look after myself and others. And you've made it, like, really, I had techniques, methods that work. Or I thought they worked. But yes, a lot of these methods, and one of them is what they call autism masking. Other neurodivergent people do it, like you mentioned, ADHD, which is another condition, which basically, when I was told, like, I couldn't make sense of it, like, because I thought, masking means that you're putting a mask.
You thought it was an active thing.
I wasn't. No, like, basically, if you don't know that you are autistic, like, it felt like it? That's all I was. Like, masking was who I was. In a sense, if it was masking, it wasn't like, like, masking is kind of, that this is my face and I pick up a mask and I put it on. So like it's sort of, to me, my understanding was it implies an awareness that you have someone else, that it's not the mask. Yeah. So that's why I had a little bit of a problem with the terminology and understanding then what do I do. But this is part of that identity journey, I guess. Yeah. A lot of work went into that. But anyway, so like really is what they call working with boundaries. Boundaries, like identifying your boundaries in the first place. And this was a hard thing to do when you've never had to do it before in that context. And a very helpful thing that I came across in that boundaries work, which is essential for someone going through that journey, for everyone, I guess, we need to be looking after ourselves. But if you don't know you have, certain needs or certain things that are different from others, you realize that you understand all those, what should be boundaries, you see as weaknesses that you need to overcome. So instead of having a mindset that allows you to stop and not go any further in areas that are really bad for you, you're like hurting yourself by pushing too hard.
Yeah.
You get to be like a champion, which is the exact opposite, and push and push and push through to achieve in areas that you should really say, actually, this is not working for me. This makes no sense to me. This is not good for me. And just stop and not do it. So for me, that was really the work, the first step, to be able to recognize that. And this essentially, that boundary setting was the unmasking as well. Recognizing this identity, this newfound identity as an autistic person, which is ongoing. So that was the first step. And something that helped me a lot was, what I was going to say, something that I came across. Boundaries are not for others. You don't set boundaries for others to respect your boundaries. Boundaries is you are taking a step back or as many steps back as in order to see your boundary. You're within your, you're in your garden and you see the boundary wall in your garden. You are at home. So it's you get back home, you get back and then you see the boundary. So it's for you to see it, not for others to see it from the other side. Oh, this is Lia's wall, Lia's boundary. No, for you. And when it comes to others, that's not mine. I came across it, I think someone, unfortunately, I don't remember the person. I think it was another autistic coach. And they said, when it comes to others, you can either give them orders or threats, even. The boundaries are with yourself. It was very helpful. To me, it was like a great insight because it allowed me to say, yes, it's just a stepping back, getting back home. And that getting back home, getting back to myself, had a lot to do with peace. That was the compass. You feel it. You feel it. You feel it, you find it, and you're like, I'm staying there. When you find it, especially in the early stages, you're very reluctant to leave it.
Yeah.
It's a very strong then. And that's good, because this is when you know, that's my boundary. I saw it. So yes, and I think I'm coming back to the support element, the support, and you go through all that. And unfortunately, as I said, I was lucky. I went into my report and conducted all these kind of organizations that they were mentioned there, and somehow this program had finished. They were not providing that sort of help. They thought, that what they had on offer was not matching what I needed. And there was a lot of that. I did apply for PIP as well, the personal independence payment, which that was traumatic. I was crying on that interview, and I still didn't get it. I was like, it's so traumatic. Like, so many people told me you have to go and appeal, and it's just I can't touch it. It's like so emotional to me. It's still this was 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, and I've been saying to myself I really need to go and pick it up, but I haven't. And a lot of autistic people or other people with other disabilities, hidden or not, it matches the experience across the board. Very few. I don't know if I came across anyone who came back and, were like clapping hands and were saying, oh, this was a fantastic, lovely experience and everything was really nice. I think I haven't met a person like that yet. But anyway, yes, there was this mismatch. And I guess a lot of it had to do with my ignorance of like all this kind of what do I need, what is there. And even with a coach and therapist, it was exactly like that. Again, another like talking about help. And this is why it is worth, even if you are not finding it. I'm like, I'll always repeat it to anyone, no matter how many times you don't find the help you need, continue asking, because eventually you do find the person or the organization that will help you and it will come together. So for me, even with a coach and therapist, I had to ask another friend who was studying for her counseling qualification. And my question was, again, it's a whole new field for me. I really don't know what are the criteria, what this therapist or coach should have, and how do I know whether they are right. So I needed someone to do like the, how do you call it, the sifting or the...
Vetting.
The vetting, yes, yes. Because I just didn't trust myself in that. And thankfully, we did have a conversation. We had many conversations, obviously, about all that. Like in lack of any support, she was the support I could turn to her, and she was lovely, and she helped me a lot. But yeah, she recommended someone, and this worked. So it takes a while, but you do find help. But what happened? Yeah, how did this all come together? Why are we here now? So in the meantime, because as I said, this coach therapist I've only found within the last year.
Yeah.
And actually, not just that, sort of it all came together at the same time. By that time, I had applied for an access to work coach. Mm-hmm. And I was successful in my application.
Right.
So this support, coaching support, was paid for by Access to Work, which is still out there. It's a wonderful program. And again, people should apply.
Yeah.
And even, I've heard there are problems. And I've had someone who was maybe, I felt a bit rushed through my initial assessment. But only this morning, I spoke to a new advisor, and she was fantastic. So people should always go and ask for help and not be disappointed to the point that they stop asking. It's just no. Determination and perseverance is worth the pain of being a little bit disappointed when your needs are not met, the response you get is not what you want, the help is not there for you, the right help.
Yeah.
So anyway, in that time, I spent like basically 2 years with nothing on my own. In the meantime, like when I say that, obviously you have to do all that journey by yourself, like either through reading, through lots of work. Learning about myself, the condition, trying to get help, trying to put help in place. And I got burned out. Mm-hmm. And I spoke about the PIP application that got rejected. 2 weeks later, I went off sick with autistic burnout from work. And that lasted 3 months.
How does that burnout manifest?
So you start getting symptoms quite early on. And the symptoms are that you stop doing things for you that give you pleasure. So hobbies, going out, meeting friends, your family, everything starts slipping out. And you become preoccupied with work and you start feeling it, that work gets harder. Everything gets harder. You even, some people, most people, I did, give up on yourself, looking after your house, looking after yourself. At some stage, I had realized I'm taking medication for hypothyroidism. I was under the impression, maybe I forgot to take my pill today. Right. But I've realized when I went to reorder, when it was the time to reorder from my medication from my doctor, I've missed 2 weeks.
Right. So it's
And I
25%.
hadn't even realized, exactly. I had not even realized. I was under the impression that, I didn't take the pill maybe 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
But it was actually 2 weeks.
Right.
And I hadn't realized. So you don't...
So how much of a factor was that, and how much of a factor was... Or did one lead to the other? Because what you were saying was that you were just focusing on work and letting everything else slip. So there was obviously an imbalance there. Did that imbalance lead to you not taking the tablets, or did the not taking the tablets lead to you having that imbalance, or were they just two completely separate things?
All of those are symptoms. Basically, your organization starts like you have switches and they start dropping.
Right.
And work, obviously, if you have to earn an income, if I didn't have to earn an income, it would have gone first, potentially. Someone who is lucky enough, I guess they can say, right, I'll focus on myself. I need to take time off. But I didn't have that luxury. And therefore, things that have no, I guess, monetary cost and maybe risk to you not paying your bills, you think that it's okay that they become less of a priority.
Right.
Because this is how much energy you have. And a lot of that happens because this work with your boundaries that we talked about, with learning, with trying to see how you can best help yourself, you end up as well teaching others. There are a lot of things happening. You're not only learning for yourself, you're teaching others, your family, your friends. And every time you talk about it, there is an emotional labor to go through all that. So it's a scary place. It was scary when I hit rock bottom. I was afraid for my life. I was reading things that people can have deadly health implications because you can push it too far before you stop. I remember a friend texted me. It was the first day that I realized I cannot go back to work. And they were like, how are you? And I was saying, I cannot talk. I can only text. I think the first couple of days I officially lost my voice. There was no talking. And like I said, the switch is dropping. I was having shutdowns. Another key symptom is that, which I had not experienced before. So I would just lay on the sofa and look at the empty wall or the ceiling, no music, no TV, nothing. And I would do nothing, stay like that, not for hours, days. I had like a week shutdown. That's how they call it. That's quite an autistic experience that you get overwhelmed by kind of, like really managing the world around you, a world that is not meant to accommodate you. So this is part of that identity that comes forward, comes with that as well. And when you don't know the boundaries, when you don't know how to look after this little identity, new person that you get to know, they will come up. Somehow you need to give up on what you knew.
Yeah.
And
so a couple of questions there. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you would have had those shutdowns if you didn't have the diagnosis?
I have no idea. I cannot really... I cannot answer that. I don't know what would have happened.
Yeah.
It's
because you've gone through the rest of your life up until the diagnosis without having such shutdowns. You just kind of battled through things, right? Yes,
but I've just said that you have a new part of you.
Yeah, of course.
So this part it involves learning, it involves letting it be, recognizing it, who it is. And as I said, if you've been not having boundaries that this part of you would like to have, until you learn, you find them, it's coming to light.
Okay.
And you start, what they call unmasking.
Yeah.
But without any way of knowing how to look after and how to be, So you continue basically, something new came in and something else had to go.
Yeah.
But it didn't go.
Yeah.
In simple terms, you're still, working as you were.
No,
you
yeah,
haven't
of course.
really. So in that phase.
But you've got this new stuff to contend with now, like the shutdowns and so on.
So this was, because as I said, I was doing a lot of work for others as well.
Yeah.
So you are accommodating others around you.
Yeah.
You let your family know, you let your friends know. You need to tell them, you need to start explaining. You learn a lot about yourself that you then need to share with others, the others around you, because it's not just you looking after yourself. You want your close environment to also start looking after you. And how are you going to explain all that? Things that you cannot understand yourself very well, to others who've known you an entire life. And again, that goes to those who were late diagnosed.
Yeah.
So imagine if it is difficult for one person who is going through that themselves to get to set boundaries or know their needs, all that. How difficult, it's equally difficult for your close environment who've always known you as what you were before. And, you know, like you say, they couldn't even recognize the signs. Very early on, like 8-9 months before I went into a burnout, the first one I've noticed was that I was losing vocabulary. I was losing, like I couldn't remember words. It is very intense, like it was as if my vocabulary had shrunk to like 10% of what it was.
Is that in Greek and in English?
Well, I remember it in English because this is like when I kind of needed to use it for work.
Right.
For example, I was interviewing. I was holding interviews at work, and it was... I was
So
like...
you weren't using Greek, so you didn't really recognise that it happened in Greek, whether it happened in Greek or not.
So even when I speak Greek here, it is with family, and it's like, you know, like the level of Greek I would use is a lot more basic anyway.
Right,
Like,
so
you
it's
know,
not,
like for
okay.
It's not the kind of language I will use.
It's not language that's working hard for you. It's,
you know, like
relaxed language.
with friends and 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
That vocabulary.
Were you just forgetting words, or were you getting some kind of like a word salad, or what was it?
Not finding the words.
Not finding the words.
It was so like throughout. Like you remember I said eventually I couldn't even speak.
Yeah.
So it was the early, but it was, I guess it was the first symptom and the last that I can remember.
I remember you. I remember you saying that to me, and it's one of those phrases that you hear from people sometimes. I couldn't even say anything, you know, and you kind of think it's an exaggeration, but I didn't realise it was a...
It's real. But you do feel it, like when it hits you eventually.
Yeah.
It was gradually, and you kind of, you know that you need to stop, and you feel that you are... I remember, as I said, I was sending letters to organizations or to, you know, whoever I would find. And I was saying, I'm really scared. I'm really afraid that I may not be able to work. That was my biggest worry, which eventually it happened. My biggest fear. And then you stop. I was again lucky to have a good employer and be able to be away for so long. Having said that, I'm now a year after maybe I returned. It's exactly a year after I had returned to work. Around that time, March it was when I started. I had a phased return. And what I say now is that I'm managing a high-functioning burnout. So we were talking about the symptoms. So a lot of the symptoms are still there. I've just got accustomed to them. And it's maybe my new life as it is. And these are... I do connect with friends a lot less than pre-burnout. Far less socializing, and especially with groups of friends.
Yeah.
It will be like mostly one-to-one or even with family. And kind of it's not just the socializing, the going out, but even like sending emails, sending text messages, like just communicating. The amount of communication I devote to friends, family, and socializing has reduced even now to less than 50%, like maybe 30% of what it used to be. Activities like, I used to be like mad with live music, going to festivals, music events. We are talking, say, at least once a week. Now it is maybe 3 or 4 a year.
Yeah.
Back then, it could be, I would be like 3 or 4 a week even, on a good week. So 3 or 4 music events a year. And, exhibitions, just all the fun stuff. And what I'm trying to do, I have to try to really keep up with things like walking and going for a swim, which is basically exercise, and to keep healthy. It should be for granted, but I have to make mental memos and actually go and do it. And at the moment, yes, these are the 2 priorities, the self-care and work.
Yeah.
And then if I have enough energy, with a handful of friends and family as much as I can. But that's how I know that I'm not post-burnout yet. Plus, I've read somewhere that some people never recover. And again, I guess to anyone listening, it's okay. The good thing with going through something like that is that you face maybe your worst fears, or you feel like, I felt that I was going to die. I felt that. That was really scary.
Yeah.
Because your body, like, as I said, all these switches, like, my heart will switch off. It's like I cannot talk. I did have health issues as well.
Yeah.
Like the permanent eye problem that's permanent now. And this is how you dig deep. This is what I'm saying. Is like in the end, people should remember that we always have something inside when we are faced with our worst fears or things that, very tough. When we are looking for help and nothing meets our needs and, nothing is there, that something will come out and we'll learn to look after ourselves on our own. And at the end of it, you faced your worst fears, basically, and you're still here. Maybe you're not the same person you used to be, but you've made it. So there is that. Because there is that, I'm also thinking, okay, what if I never recover? Maybe that's how I learn to live. So it's not something that phases me. I'm happy to accept it. I think what the biggest gain is that I'm happy to accept worst case scenario.
Yeah.
A lot easier. They're not really, it's like, okay, if that's the option, if that's what will happen. And the moment you do that, it has stopped being a worst case scenario. And then again, it's also like, I don't believe that I'll never recover. It might be a slow journey, but I have been recovering slowly and getting better. And through that, and that's, I guess, where we get to here. So when I was alone, I developed, what was I? Like a project manager, a checklist.
Yeah.
And that was mainly a way to keep afloat, to not forget to look after myself. It started from when I realized that, I'm not taking my medication, or, I realized that I'm really not looking after myself and not enjoying maybe life. The looking after, not just, the basic stuff like hygiene or exercise, resting enough. But it's sort of, I tried to keep, to put things that were important for my well-being into a very simple, 7-8 steps checklist. That when I was getting to this kind of chaos of how do I know I'm well, I will kind of repeat to myself and tick. Some of them were I needed to do daily, and some were like, it's okay if you do it once a week, but do it once a week kind of thing. Right. And so it was like a little tool to check on myself, like a checklist of self-care, really. And it's that Beautiful Burnout recovery checklist. And when I started coming out of it, I was like, nobody should be going alone through that. Nobody, like, I felt lucky that I was able to do that for myself. It only takes a little bit of research and people looking into statistics to understand how difficult it can be for a number of autistic people, neurodivergent people, but generally people in a difficult situation and having to go through it alone. It can be risky. So it sort of turned into like that business idea of creating a business to offer that, basically. And this is how Autentive came in place. It's like a community interest company created this to deliver as a first offer this burnout recovery support system, I'll call it.
Right.
It's the checklist, but also with it, a 10-week period where whoever registers will get an email every 2 weeks. And it's like having a buddy, your safety buddy, your self-care buddy.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to be. It's a one-way communication. And that's also because I've been there, and this kind of, if people are spending their energy, people who are there with very limited energy resources, rather than needing to do anything, it's the checklist there for them to use, but they don't need to interact. I mean, they don't need to do work. There is no homework other than, yes, use it when you need it. Try to read it daily, to as like a check-in. And then the email communications is one way to know that, there is someone out there kind of maybe a little bit further in their journey, me, trying to, basically maybe pick up a few of the things that we discussed today.
Yeah.
And reminding them that they're wonderful, they're doing great, they are not alone. We are in this together. This situation will not be forever, and there is support, inexpensive. And I guess in these communications, I'll try to fit in as much information as possible as well, as with regards to the support of what support is available, what may be certain common themes people may find in kind of with burnout.
Is that support there just for them? Because you were talking about educating family, friends, maybe colleagues was very draining on your energy. Are you going to be, maybe either now or in the future, putting tools in place to be able to...
Exactly. That's the intention, because in the end, really, no matter how much people try to help themselves, I think to be well, there is the element of self-care, yes, very important. But especially people with disabilities, long-term health conditions, is a collective effort. You cannot, no matter how much you try, no matter how good you get at looking after yourself, like you do need, and this is sort of what they call as the social model of disability, that it's not the person who has the problem, it's the environment that is not suited to their needs or is not helpful enough, supportive enough, and they actually themselves struggle to accommodate the world and others around them. So if people thinking along those terms, then maybe that will be a great start actually to understand that accountability that we all have against each other, that we all are here to look after each other and be mutually supportive. But even more so with, I guess people who very bravely, courageously, because it takes courage, are asking for help. Are, like you said, you get into that vulnerable state and saying, I can't do it on my own. Please help me. So there's definitely a bit of that.
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to do.
And I was going to say, like, really, this newsletter, I call it newsletter more like the format of delivery. Like, it will be in the form of an email communication, I guess. But it will be focused on autistic burnout or burnout recovery, but it can be very useful for anyone who is struggling with self-care, really, and others who need to learn more about burnout, autistic burnout, and how to maybe, by learning what the issues are or some of the issues are, they can be more supportive to people in their environment and look after them better. We all need to learn how to look after each other, ourselves and each other better. That's a great aspiration to have generally, like throughout our lives, how to get better at looking after ourselves and others. I mean, it can only make our world better.
Well, you would hope.
Yeah, I guess we take a lot of things for granted. That's human nature. And then sometimes, no matter what the intentions are, or the best intentions, sometimes people need very specific help. And autistic people, a key thing is that you cannot communicate as well. And I'm lucky, what, some will call highly functional, which we said there is a whole lot of discourse as to why we shouldn't be using those terms. But the other term is low support needs, or that I actually, might be in better place to help myself than others. And moving out of autism even, like you can have a good number of the population of people around us that do struggle, do need intense support or medium level support. And when we talk about accountability, it's on anyone, all of us, to look at what we take for granted and look at others and try to immerse ourselves in their lived experience as best as we can when we get the chance. I know for myself this is difficult. We are people, we live in our lives, and we are very narrowly contained in our own lived experience, in our environment. It takes a big heart, but also it's a skill in itself to be able to do that, to get to know, to what, we simply say, walk in someone else's shoes. It's not easy. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
So, but with Autentive and Beautiful Burnout recovery tool, support system, I do hope I give something back. And if there is a gap and if there is a need, it's there.
I've got some questions that I want to ask you about, but maybe we'll leave those till next time we talk.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah. Well,
so people can hopefully register.
Yeah.
We will have some information on how they can do so.
Yeah, so thanks for chatting with me today, Lia, about this. I mean, we chat about these kind of things all the time. It's just that today we've recorded it, isn't it? But yeah, so for anybody listening, the Autentive is a new service which is helping people with autistic burnout, specifically as its initial offering. You can sign up for that. There are details about that in the show notes. Sign up to the newsletter. Also, like and follow on social media. And we will be back for another episode of the Autentive podcast. We're not even sure what it's going to be called yet, but for now it's being called the Autentive
Running
podcast.
title. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.